What's up, guys? This is College Sports Hour hosted by Clint McPherson and co-host Greg Dixon. We're going to take listeners inside the Division I college football, basketball, and baseball landscape. So this podcast includes interviews, analysis, and coverage of live sporting events by two dudes who love sports. The College Sports Hour is your ultimate stop for all things D1 football, basketball, and baseball related. We make weekly predictions and discuss all of the top stories from who is going to win the college football playoff to who's going to be dancing come March. No matter the team, if it's trending, you'll hear about it. College Sports Hour podcast is set to inform, educate, and entertain listeners with unique perspectives and opinions from a former collegiate athlete and from a guy who went to college. All right, man. So diving into week one, really hammering that down real quick. So we saw, college football is here.
It's about time is all I got to say. It is about time. I've been going through withdrawals for the last 6 months waiting on this to get here.
Oh, without a doubt, man. So it's one of those things. It's the anticipation that builds up. The NCAA football is back and everybody's just biting at the nails to actually sit down and watch. I sat there and tuned in on August 25th, which was really week 0 instead of week 1 when the teams that, are still D1 teams were playing, but, the teams that really nobody is talking about.
Right.
So, the real week kicked off back in, September. So when we're going in, right there, or August 31st or whatever day it was, you're talking about having 4 ranked teams playing against each other. Did you have any takeaways from that?
Well, I know that just kind of like you a little bit as far as leading up to it. You've been hearing about, and we've been hearing about, been talking about all these big teams, about the potential for what was coming up this year, about what could happen. That Alabama's going to be there. You've been hearing talk about Clemson still being in the mix. Could Georgia come back after what had happened to them in the national championship game last year? And then it seemed like it might be this wide open crapshoot for who might get in that 4th spot. Even this early in the year, still talking about that college playoff right there, what could happen. And then it was finally here. You finally get to see no more talk, no more just talking about what could happen. Now you're getting ready to start seeing 2 teams go at it and see who's actually going to be the better team on game day.
And that's just an awesome feeling, that first kickoff, everybody's like, even with the NFL around the corner, you're preseason. So you're sitting there gaming it up. You got the preseason going, right. You got the college football kicking off. So it's a really exciting time for football fans in general. Going into week 4, our week 1, like I said, we had 4 matchups that had ranked teams in. And again, the preseason rankings, as we talked about earlier in our conversation, prepping for this episode, really don't really hold any weight. Don't mean anything unless you're one of those teams like that Alabama that is going to be in the top 5 no matter what. The Georgia that is coming and doing the thing with Kirby. It's just big and something that again, it was a big week. 4 games that featured 8 ranked teams. So you had Washington and Auburn, which was basically I sat there and watched. I was glued to the TV. It wasn't a high scoring game, but Auburn took that game. They were ranked 9th. You had Washington ranked 6th, and they took the game 21-16. And again, Auburn is one of those SEC teams that it's hit or miss, but at the same time, they've been relevant for the last few years.
Well, you were sitting there not only talking about Auburn, but you're looking at Washington too, coming from that Pac-12 background that, let's face it, really didn't live up to all the hype last year. There was a lot of question marks coming into this season about would the Pac-12 have any chance of putting a team into the college playoff there? And so Washington was supposed to be that one team there. And so could they come in and could they really make a big mark come in that first game of the season against a powerhouse in the SEC in Auburn? And so the question marks around both teams. And then you got to see 2 teams really go at it. You're right. It wasn't a high scoring affair that came in through there, but it was a really good college football game that saw Auburn came out. But I think at the same time, Washington, you can say, hey, you know what? They're still a player in all this.
Yeah, without a doubt. When you're ranked 6th and you're playing the number 9 team in the nation, even when it's the beginning of the year, you can right the ship easily and quick. Especially with the games coming up for them. And being in the Pac-12, I really think they can turn it around quick. And again, it wasn't a crushing defeat by any means, like some of these teams we're about to talk about.
Right.
But it was one of those, kicking off the year. They suffered an early loss, but again, it was a quality loss, so nothing to hang their head about.
But when you get to thinking about, okay, at the end of the year, when the committee's getting together and they're making their decisions, they're going to look back at this loss. Who knows how many losses Washington may have come to the end of the year. But if this is that one loss that's hanging out there and they've come through and they've won the Pac-12 and their one loss was to, at that point, a ninth-ranked Auburn team, that's going to weigh really heavy in their favor to, say, hey, you know what, this Washington team is legit and they might be able to do something, come around the end of this year.
Oh, no, without a doubt. I mean, later on after that game, I was glued to definitely one of the games I really kept my eye on was the Michigan and Notre Dame game. So you really don't know with Michigan what you're going to get with this Coach Harbaugh team. I mean, it's like he's supposed to be the guy that brings them back to glory, but since he's been there, it just has not panned out. And I don't know what it's going to take, but he cannot get them over the hump. And I know to Michigan fans, that has to be heartbreaking.
Well, you were hearing about coming into this season that this right here was going to be the season because he finally had a quarterback that was going to run his season. He got this transfer in there, so a lot of talk, a lot of commotion about this was going to be his year. And there was also some talk there as well that if he doesn't do something this year, then he could be on the hot seat. Now, I know for a lot of our listeners that may seem really, really odd to hear about that this guy that they brought in with about a hoopla and just a real big commotion coming in from the NFL, but he was coming back to be this Michigan man, and they finally got their guy. And he's had winning seasons. It's been an okay deal, but he hasn't been able to get over the hump when it comes to Michigan State and Ohio State. He's got a losing record against both of those teams. So, it's kind of like this idea. And then he comes in and really, let's just be honest, they did not play well against Notre Dame. It wasn't a good game at all. And so after that game, you're kind of looking around, scratching your head going, hey, okay, what is it? What is it going to take for us to finally be able to return to these glory days?
Right. And I mean, and Michigan continues to get the hype because of Coach Harbaugh, I really think, because, of what the expectations that were put on his head and coming into the game to really change that program around. And I just don't think they're living up to it. Again, I know it takes time when you get a new coach in from time to time to really be able to change the culture before he's able to implement his players. But he's been there long enough for that to actually happen. And so for him to get beat, and actually the cool thing about the Michigan and Notre Dame, the revival of the rivalry, bringing it back to where Notre Dame and Michigan actually are playing each other on an annual basis.
Right.
And that's just exciting for the Notre Dame fans and Michigan in general. So I think with Notre Dame coming out on top, I mean, what does that do to Coach Harbaugh's psyche, though? What's going on there,
Well, it's a tough way to start your season, no doubt. And, if you're a Michigan fan, if you've been hanging around a while, if you've been waiting and waiting, you find yourself still in another year of saying, okay, this doesn't look like it's going to be our year either. What else do we have to do to bring in here to help ourselves to win? And at the same time, there's a lot of conversation happening around Notre Dame as well. They've been kind of in this little season of being kind of mediocre. I mean, they've had some decent seasons. They've had some good seasons, but nothing great that the Notre Dame alum are looking for, kind of being back in that conversation of title contenders every single year. We know they're not really officially a part of a conference, so they're looking to do their own thing to get themselves and get their name up there into that conversation at the end of the season. And yes, this win against Michigan does help that, but let's be honest, it wasn't like this massively convincing win either that puts them into this conversation of, hey, you've gotten your way back into the national title conversation.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, week 2 was an example of that, them struggling pretty heavily at the beginning of that game.
Absolutely.
So going into the third ranked game that we saw was the Miami versus LSU game.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, my gosh. A team that really just LSU's defense really showed up. But you can say, I know the hype around Miami from bringing Mark Richt in and them actually having a good year last year, considering how Miami just has fallen off the map and having that season, the expectations, you can tell that Mark Richt knows what he's doing.
Absolutely.
Everywhere he goes. I mean, he's only, Georgia, he was consistently a 10-win season. So what you're going to get with them. And I really think he's the guy to really bring Miami back to relevancy, which is great for them. But at the same time, the hype built around it again. Everybody wants to throw that Miami or that Michigan at the top of the rankings before they're even ready.
Yeah.
And so I think coming into this year, they were just built up a lot higher than they should have been. And if you look at last year, they played, a lot of their wins were real close. And so it wasn't something they were just going in there and dominating teams. They were pulling stuff out at the last minute, drives against that final drive against Florida State and pulling that game out. There were just several wins, at least 4 to 5 of them last year that could have went either way.
Right.
So again, I just don't think Miami's there, but they definitely didn't show up for the LSU game.
Right. I think that you kind of piggybacking on what you're saying. I like Mark Richt. I think that he is a great football coach. If I had a son who was going to play college ball, he's one of the guys that I would want him playing for. I think that he does a great job of taking these young talent, bringing them together, and helping making them in and helping them get to the next level. I wasn't in favor of him leaving Georgia. You kind of looking at what Kirby Smart is doing now, and it's kind of hard to argue against that. But he's found himself, I think, into a nice place. I agree with you. I think he's the guy who will bring Miami back to relevance and bring him back to that national title conversation. However, at the same time, man, it was a flat out egg that Miami came out and laid in that first week. LSU looked strong. They looked quick. They looked like that they were a little bit hungrier to get to the ball and be there to play that day. Miami came in there, and I don't know if they just got shell-shocked at the very beginning or what happened, but it just seemed like they could never get any real momentum in that week. You get under the big lights. It's a lot of conversation, a lot of talk about your team and about that particular game. And at that point in time, there wasn't a whole lot of conversation that LSU necessarily was going to be the LSU of old. Could they come in there with the quarterback? What was the running game going to look like after they had their running backs depart for the NFL? What was all the conversation going to be, and how would it translate on the field? And now we kind of get into the game, and we saw it happen, man. And LSU just took it to Miami. Personally, I'd like to see Miami kind of make a turnaround here and kind of make their way back through the rest of this season. But man, it was a hard game to watch.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, LSU's that quarter they got under center. I mean, he was calm, cool, and collective. I mean, he led some big drives. Miami bringing back Rozier and supposedly supposed to, be the guy, and I saw during the game that they just were not clicking, and you didn't see much of the turnover chain being passed around either.
Not at all.
If you noticed that. But I mean, falling 33-17 to Miami, that's, LSU taking the game actually 33-17 over Miami. That was a huge blow, I think, for them being as highly ranked as them. I know Mark Richt had high hopes for that team coming in. And then, Coach O just being on the outskirts of the top 25, being right there at the 25th position, again, that's not glaring. That doesn't say anything. When I see an LSU, it's like being, to me, when they're ranked in the top 25, at least on the bubble, you're seeing like, okay, they're being thrown up there because they're one of the SEC teams.
Right.
But at the same time, they actually went in there, handled their business. And it's hard to argue after that first game that they shouldn't be ranked.
Well, I mean, it is, you kind of look at it and say, if you came in and said, maybe LSU shouldn't be in the top 25 at that point in time. But as you said, to kick this thing off, the top 25 and the preseason top 25 don't really mean a whole lot. Everybody's kind of working from 0-0 at that point. But when you come out of that game, it's kind of hard to look around and say, LSU shouldn't be, maybe even, shouldn't have even been ranked higher than that, to be completely honest with you.
No, from that game, we ended up transitioning over to Labor Day over on, September 3rd. And that was the game that I was looking more forward to from being from Tallahassee, being a Florida State fan.
Yeah, do we need to hold a moment of silence before we talk about this game?
We might need to, because that was crushing. I mean, I don't know how many years I've had in a row to where high hopes, man, and going through it. But I knew it was, again, Rome wasn't built in a day. I don't think Florida State's going to turn it around in a day. But the thing that got me with that is they're at home playing against a Virginia Tech Bud Foster team that I knew that you always know they're going to have a good defense.
Oh, absolutely.
And going in there, but knowing that they lost, I want to say 7 legit guys on the defense from last year, if not 10. I mean, and they're talking about how young the team is. Everybody's giving it to Florida State because of all the momentum Willie Taggart had behind him. Coming in, being the new coach, not even really doing anything at Oregon, 7-6. I guess when you gauge, okay, he took the Oregon struggled mightily the year before that, and he changed them around. But I mean, again, his offense, it's going to take time, I guess, for Florida State to learn. But playing at home and then getting in the red zone as many times as they did, away with 3 points. I just don't know what to say, and I don't know what to think. And they've had plenty of time for them to learn this new offense, even if it was just basic, run the same 10 plays over and over just to the other side of the field. Got to do something right.
Well, I think it even goes back a little bit further to even the beginning of last season. There was a lot of hype around Florida State at that point in time, and you kick off the season with Alabama that year, but then Francois gets hurt. your quarterback gets hurt. And so it's kind of like, okay, everything's downhill from there. So coming back into this season with that, there were expectations about, okay, we didn't get to see the Florida State that we thought we would see last year. But this year, we got healthy quarterback, man. We're healthy. We're ready to go. New head coach, new philosophy. It's coming here once again with the expectations that Florida State would give Clemson a run for their money and Miami a run for the money as to who would come out of the ACC this year. And then to watch that game, once again, a nationally televised game, all eyes are on you. It's that Monday night game. Nobody else is watching. NFL isn't going on right now. So, I mean, it's everybody in the country is gathered around the TVs watching this one game. And we did not get anything close to what we were hoping that we would get. And so, man, to come in there and see how all that was going to transpire and take place, not a good kickoff, not a good way to start the new era of football at Florida State, which has such that rich history and that rich tradition coming in there of, and look, let's face it, it's Florida State. There's going to be expectations every single year. You got to deal with it. And Coach Taggart was sitting there saying, this is the dream job. Now, of course, all coaches say that when they get hired at a new school. I get that. But let's just say, yes, it is his dream job. You coming in there, there's going to be expectations for him to perform, especially to perform in the ACC. You coming in there with not necessarily a rival, but another strong team with Virginia Tech. You know what they're bringing. You know what they're going to do. It wasn't a surprise as to how Virginia Tech was going to run their offense or run their defense. But at the same time, you got to tip their hat to them, man. They took it to Florida State. They came into their house. They came in there and wore them out. And so, man, you got to give it up to Virginia Tech and say, man, there may be something to reckon with come throughout the rest of the season with the ACC.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. So as of right now with Virginia Tech, it's still, the jury's still out because, and when we transition over to week 2, we'll talk about it because it really goes, that horrible game lingered over to week 2 for Florida State in the Sanford game. I know the Sanford, Bulldogs or whatever their mascot is, they came in with a legit passing game. And I knew that was going to be a little bit of a trouble trying to, having one of the best quarterbacks on that team lead under center. It's usually hard when a guy is on point, the passing game, to get it nailed down right away.
Right.
But, I just knew over time that it was going to happen. But the guy came out there and threw over 450 yards, if not 500. I was very shocked in that week 2 game. But just wrapping up that week one, just transitioning back to week 1 before we get into week 2, again, the 2 upsets, again, I don't even know if you could call them upsets, was Washington losing to Auburn and Florida State losing to Virginia Tech.
Right.
Again, the case is still, I know, worthy of a ranking. Again, Washington is definitely, I believe, it's too early to tell if they should drop out. But I don't think so because, again, we saw what they did last year. We saw what they've done over the last couple of years. So I think the case is still too early to decide on that.
Well, before we jump into week 2 real quick, I thought we would just hit on just really, really quickly. It's kind of hard to have a conversation about college football without also throwing in there your reigning champs, Alabama coming in there. I'm not an Alabama fan, but you got to give some respect. There's a lot of conversation about what they were going to do with the quarterback position this year. A little bit of a controversy that was coming in there. But once again, they come through there. They handle their business. They're looking as good as ever. And I'm just telling you, as we go through the rest of this season, they're going to be in that conversation the entire year. And it's going to take a really strong team to knock them off.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Again, like you said, the QB controversy with Hurt and Tua. He was a backup last year, and he comes in and does what he does. You can tell he's just better. And it's hard because Saban does have 2 quality guys.
Right.
But you got Jalen Hurt is more of your athlete, I see him more of like a Cam Newton type quarterback.
Which isn't a bad guy to be, by the way.
No, exactly. Not a bad guy to be, but in college he leads you to the promised land, but I don't know in the NFL he's ever going to.
Don't tell me that, okay? Don't tell me that. I'm still holding on to hope.
Yeah, but so again, you can tell it's just such a hard decision, but Nick is going to make, Saban's just going to make the decision that's best for the team.
Oh, no doubt.
And seeing that guy under center and going out and doing what he does, especially in the first 2 weeks. And it's just hard to.
Darts. He is throwing spot on passes.
The guy is on the money. This guy is legit. So it wasn't, it's not something that's just he's a 1-game wonder.
Right.
Let him, back to win the national championship or whatnot. He is somebody that is the truth. So I just think going forward, I'm seeing this guy again, like you said, they're going to be there at the end. It's who's going to step up to beat him. That's what I'm thinking.
You think about it. I know we got to transition on, but you think about it. It's not like Alabama is known for their great quarterback play through the Saban era. I mean, you've had some good quarterbacks that have come in there, but it's been more about their defense and more about their running game. And you kind of look at that through the players that have been drafted through the NFL, and it just seems like every single year they get an entire new defense, and that defense is just as good as the previous ones that just got drafted. But here he is, Nick Saban sitting there with this really great quarterback. I mean, he has the potential to be a really great quarterback coming through there. And that's just one more element to make that team that much better and that much harder to beat throughout the rest of the season.
Oh, no, without a doubt. And I really think, before transitioning on and just touching back on Alabama one more time, is the whole fact that this guy, like you said, he might not have the best guy under center, since his reign, but he has the best guy on his team that can make the decisions that doesn't cost the team.
Right.
I mean, the guy under center is always for Alabama is the guy that's making the decisions as far as Glover, man. That's the thing that keeps their offense. And as long as you have somebody under center that's not turning the ball over, and you got an NFL caliber defense every year,
right,
you're going to always be at the top, man.
Absolutely.
And then when you get somebody like Tua to come in and just throw darts or hurt at, Jalen is in his own right awesome.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, like, you have two quality guys that I don't think it matters. I do think that Tua takes them to the next level, and makes them really unbeatable in my eyes right now. And again, I know it's too early to say that, but
sure,
man, I don't ever think it's too early right now to say that Alabama's unbeatable.
Well, you look at their track record, and they pretty much are.
No, exactly. So let's switch over to, I think that's enough. We touched pretty good on week 1. So going over to week 2 and the breakdown there, it was one of those weeks that, it wasn't something that was really looked upon. You had Georgia playing South Carolina, which was 2 ranked teams, and then you had USC playing Stanford. And so those were the only 2 games that had matchups of people in the top 25 as far as, number 3 versus number 24 and number 17 versus number 10.
Right.
So you go into there, and it's one of those things, from previous years that the top 25 is typically going to handle their business, because you got a lot of FCS schools, you got a lot of lower level games that nobody is not on anybody's radar really.
Right.
So, and like you said, I mean, Georgia bringing in Kirby Smart, Georgia, again, it's hard to argue them getting rid of Mark Richt, because I do agree with you. Like, that guy averaging 10 wins a season, how can you be mad at that?
Sure.
But they gambled, and their gamble, I mean, it looks like
it's paying off.
It's paying off immediately. And again, so they're going to continue to be there. The guy, Kirby Smart, is bred by, he has Saban running through his blood, I guess. So exactly. So it's going to be interesting to see them just battling it out to see who can do it. Like, is it going to be Georgia? Is it going to be Alabama? But again, Georgia didn't get the job done last year. But it's one of those things that you can definitely say that they're going to be there at the end.
Well, you watched them against South Carolina this past week, and there was a lot of talk, and you heard it on a lot of different sports shows that Georgia needs to be careful. They should be on upset alert this weekend, because South Carolina's strong. South Carolina's got a good game plan to be able to come in there and possibly knock off Georgia at this point in time. But I tell you what, you sit there and you watch this quarterback play. You watch Jake Fromm play, and he came in, he did a great job last year, but they were telling him he needed to take a bigger step this year. And then what about that running game? They lost their 2 starting running backs to the draft last year. What was the running game going to look like this time? And it seemed like it was a game going into halftime, and then all of a sudden that third quarter hit, and man, they just took off from there. And the adjustments that they made at halftime, really getting that running game going strong at that point, opened up the passing game a little bit more. That is a tough team. That is a tough team to be able to beat. Plus, their defense is coming on strong as well. They've got guys, they got playmakers at a lot of different positions on that defense there, specifically in the secondary. Man, they came in there and I think they proved in that game. If you can prove anything in the second week, I think they proved something in that second week that says, hey, you know what, it wasn't just a fluke last year of what we did, but we're going to be the team to beat in the SEC East this year, and we are prepared to give Alabama a run for their money.
Oh, without a doubt. And I even at the week 2, that's somewhere where they have that number 3 ranking going into week 2, that it's deserved. It's like there's not really an argument. I really hate the preseason rankings and ranking teams. I know you have to have some kind of structure going into it. But if you're going to tell me in the top 5 that they don't belong,
right,
you don't watch college football.
True.
So it's just one of those things right now. And then so after that game, I mean, Georgia just put it on them that second half.
Sure.
And it was one of those things that, again, the adjustments they made at halftime. Yeah, it was a game going into half, but it was one of those things that, when the Georgia team kicked it in, basically you saw the Georgia from last year. I mean, they kicked it in and they basically widened that gap and took it 41-17. And it was at the end of the day, you look at it and Georgia's for real.
Absolutely.
So after that game, I was keeping my eyes again because I like following the top 25. I watched the USC and Stanford game. And USC is one of those tricky teams too. I know a lot of fans. I know a lot of people that just love USC. A lot of people I served in the military with, officers they just rave about USC,
right.
And it's one of those things that they're just not back. And I don't know what it's going to take, but it seems like every year they want to throw them in the top 25 or the top 10, and then they just fall. And the Stanford game is not a huge loss at the beginning. Again, Stanford came in ranked 10th. So losing 17-3 again is not one of those, it's not going to kill your season.
Right.
But again, it's one of those things that, you have to show up. And that offense, they only scored 3 points. So it's just one of those things. Where is the USC that of old that everybody's looking for? And I don't think they're showing up this season either.
Well, you're trying to recapture what appears to be the magic that was left over from Pete Carroll in the Pete Carroll years with, with Reggie Bush and all those guys. And obviously it's a whole different crop of people. It's a whole different coaching staff trying to carve out a new niche for them. And, you thought last year that that might be the case with them with Sam Darnold, at the helm. And there was a lot of talk about him and what could happen last year. And man, it didn't work out for him then. And now they've moved on from Sam Darnold. He's gone into the NFL. So now it's a whole new time, a whole new period for them, and it seems like it's the same old USC that we're still used to facing. It's a lot of hype surrounding them, but maybe not quite so much substance. And I'm with you on it. Yeah, the game isn't that big of a deal, the loss to Stanford, but at the same time, is this just going to be the tale of another season? It's basically a repeat of the same story that we've already heard. A lot of hype going into the preseason. Here we go at the beginning of the season, and we're looking at basically a 500, maybe a slightly better than 500 team.
Right. I mean, I totally agree. And then you have the Stanford team sitting there. It's hard to ever put my finger on Stanford's pulse as far as are they a legit top 10 team? And coming in at ranked 10th, it's just one of those things. Every time I see them play, I don't see it. They win, but it's never flashy. It's not something that stands out to you. But again, at the end of the year, they're not. It's like they're a team that's not there either. They're so close, but yet so far at the same time. So it's one of those things that I'm torn every time I try to get excited about what Stanford's doing. Great coach, and they have some great players, and I believe they have one. Is it Love, right? Bryce Love. That's from Wake
the
Forest.
Running back. Yeah, absolutely.
Right down the road from where I'm living right now. I mean, and he's the truth. But this year he started off, and I think he suffered an injury. Week 1 he didn't. I think San Diego State got him down. I mean, they run blitz after run blitz, and he couldn't get going. And I know he had a better game against USC. But again, him having an injury, that's going to hurt that team going forward. Hopefully he can get better. He's obviously the engine that gets him going.
It's a part of this as well. It's another one of those Pac-12 teams that's on the West Coast that may not get a whole lot of coverage, may not get a whole lot of love either. But at the same time, you're a part of this conference that, for the last year or two, hasn't really had what it seems like a really strong presence or a really strong outpouring. And so kind of like Washington in week 1, you're looking for a team to really stand out, a team to really kind of capture everybody's attention, to kind of drive some of that attention away from just this East Coast side, but also to the West Coast. And if they play in those late games, and sometimes it's hard to stay up and catch up and see what all's happening there, but you're looking for that flash. And you really thought that Bryce Love would be the guy that could bring some excitement to that team. He's in the Heisman conversation. After that week 1 game, it kind of dwindled out a little bit there, but you're right. You're looking for something that's really going to make everybody pop and go wow and say, this is the team that we can really pay attention to as they come out of the Pac-12. And, there's been conversation around Stanford for years, and it just never seems that we quite get over that hump. There's always seems to be that one little roadblock there that just can't seem to get over. I like Stanford. you're always kind of hoping that this might be the year for them. I just don't know that they've got all the pieces in play this year. Yeah, they've got a pretty strong, or should have a pretty strong running game, but outside of that, is there going to be a whole lot there for them to really hang their hat on this season?
Right. I mean, their defense is always stout. I mean, they're always going to have a decent, legitimate defense that their offense can rely on. But again, that only takes you so far. You got to have an offense that can score points. And I think sometimes that's been the downfall. Again, they're not a flashy team as far as they're not going to blow you out. They're not going to run like in Oregon, with Chip Kelly's Oregon team, run 60 points, or an Ohio State where they're dropping 77, 83, some ridiculous score,
basketball scores.
Yeah, man, it's like, what is going on? So you're not going to see that. But I mean, they're steady. They stay the course, and again, I'm going to be interested in following them this year and seeing how that works out. But the two games that I'm really interested in talking about for week 2, and again, it might be too early to really get on the Herm Edwards bandwagon.
No, it is not. It is not too early to get on the Herm Edwards bandwagon. I've been waiting to talk about this game. You play to win the game.
Exactly. That's awesome. That is awesome that you threw that out there, because that was running through my mind. Man, what can I say? Because Michigan State, they had a shootout, I want to believe, in week 1 against Utah State.
Yeah, they had a hard time hanging on there to win that game. They struggled a little bit there to get over that hump.
No, exactly. So it's like, were they, is Michigan State, because I think Michigan State going into that game, they were ranked.
Absolutely, ranked number 15.
Right, exactly. So going into that game, getting beat, I mean, geez, that is a huge win early on for Herm Edwards. Pulling out the 2 first games of the season when everybody thought this was a ridiculous move. Everybody hated it. They were getting bashed. There's memes everywhere on the internet. I mean, it gained a lot of traction about this could be the worst move in program history. I mean, before the dude even stepped on the field and was able to coach it down. And so him pulling these 2 games off and then winning in the fashion he did against Michigan State, I mean, that's pretty big.
Well, Leslie, about to say, I'm glad you hit on the point about the controversy around his hire. You got to remember that it was 9 years that he's been out of coaching completely. Only, he's been working at ESPN for 9 years. And so, and before that, it's been 30 years since he was coaching in the college ranks. So you bring in this guy in to begin to lead this Arizona State program. And I got to say that he's another one of those guys like Mark Richt, that if I had a son who was playing football, he's another one of those guys that I'd want my son playing for. Just not that I've ever met him or I know a whole lot about him personally or anything, but everything that you read about him, everything that you hear people say about him is nothing but glowing remarks. And so he comes in there with all this controversy about why he was hired, how he was hired. And you're right, it could have been the worst move in program history, which is saying a lot, first of all.
Exactly.
I mean, you're going back throughout the history of this program saying that it could be the worst move ever. And then he comes in there, man, and completely, you talk about changing the culture a few minutes ago at Florida State. And this guy comes in here with this rah-rah mentality, man, getting behind his players, getting them coaching. You talk about coaching them up and getting them into a position where they feel like they can win. And so you got Michigan State coming to town, coming into your place. And you know what? Michigan State's supposed to win this game. You're Michigan State. You've got the history. I mean, you know what? You've got Big Ten title options on your mind and everything. And you come into Arizona State thinking that you're going to win. And then you're 10 points up in the 4th quarter. And Arizona State comes back, and I was reading some of the articles that was coming back into the game, and the conversation went something like this: Herm Edwards looked at his quarterback on the final drive of the game and said, "Just get us close, and we'll kick it and we'll win." Talk about the confidence that you have in your players to say, "Hey, just get us close, and then we'll take it from there." And that's exactly what happens. They come in there and they kick the field goal to win the game. Couldn't think of a better thing to happen for a better man, for a better coach, to get that program headed in the right direction, man. You can't sit there and say that this is the biggest win in program history or anything like that.
Right.
But talk about a marquee win for a coach getting started this season. They've got a long road to go, man. They got some tough games on their schedule coming up down the line here. But you talk about a feel-good story already at the beginning of of this season. Herm Edwards is it right now for me.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with that. I mean, it's one of those things that Herm Edwards is a guy you can't not like. Again, he's somebody that you want to put, if you had kids that are playing football that you would not blink an eye at putting them on his team. He's one of those guys, again, that hasn't been coaching for a while. He has a lot of knowledge, though, that he's been bringing to ESPN and helping and giving people different perspectives. And he's always taken that approach to where he's a calm, cool, collective cat that again, that you can listen to. And sometimes you're like, what is he saying? But then you're like,
Right.
like this guy knows what he's talking about, and I can see that having the confidence, like you said, telling them just get them close enough so they can kick that field goal to win it. Having the confidence in your team and just letting them know that, and letting your quarterback know that. I mean, he's like, dude, what? And the quarterbacks always, they want to get them close enough, but they always want to score that touchdown because that's more guaranteed than that field goal. I mean, especially the field goal kickers today, FSU.
Somebody sounds a little bitter.
The Aguayo family, what's going on? Like what's going on, guys? We have one of the best field goal kickers in program history, or actually college history that goes out, and then he comes in the NFL and starts laying eggs, and then his brother, he's supposed to be the next best thing. And ever since he's been kicking for us the last 2 years, I mean, it's been hold your breath. We'll see what happens. But I mean, like Herm Edwards, man, great feel good story. If there's a feel good story for in week 2, I mean, he's it. He's one of those guys that I'm going to be rooting for Arizona State the rest of the year.
Absolutely.
Just because, again, coming in there, with Michigan State coming in there, them being the underdog, in Arizona State, and then pulling that game off after being down by 10 and pulling it out at the end of the game. That was a real good game. And I feel privileged that I actually got to see that.
Absolutely.
So, and maybe even a bigger game, though, for Kentucky fans. I mean, Kentucky coming into this game, I want to say 31 years, have not been able to get over the hump and beat Florida. And for Florida to go in with a new coach and Dan Mullen, which it seems like a lot of the new coaches from Frost to Mullen to Taggart, they're just, I mean, again, I know it's too early, but man, who's going to be the one that actually gets this thing headed in the right direction the quickest? So Florida going in there's high hopes bringing in Dan Mullen, actually, that it changed Mississippi State around and brought them to relevance, and it's one of those things that, Florida was like, we got our man. And so they're going in there thinking that, I mean, this was one of the last games I would have said, Kentucky was going to win.
Sure.
Because just history is going to tell you that they're going to find a way to lose it. There's been a lot of times that Kentucky's been right there on the edge of being able to break through it, but they flop at the end.
Right.
And this time they actually followed through, and Stoops, I mean, he was ecstatic, man.
Well, you got to think about, why wouldn't you be? I mean, you're one of the bigger underdogs going into week 2. Here, you're going into the swamp. It's not exactly like the easiest place in the world to play. So, I mean, you got all the energy, you got all the hype. And here you are as Kentucky. It's not exactly like you're known as for your football program or anything along those lines. You're kind of an afterthought out there after the basketball program that's there at Kentucky. But yet you come in there, you hold your own. Your quarterback plays his tail off. I don't know that a whole lot of props is being given to him for that performance that he had in week 2. But, man, he really, really threw the ball well that game. He was really, really smart in the way that he handled the offense there. And, man, threw some dimes in there to give them an opportunity to win that game, and was able to come out with the W. I mean, hats off to them. I think they did a great job. You're right. Coach Stoops, great game plan to get that game going. You did kind of cross your fingers there as you're watching towards the end of that game, saying, "Hey, is this are they going to give this game away? Is this going to be another one of those things like the last couple of years where they've had this opportunity, they've had it in the bag, and it just kind of slipped away, but they were able to hold on." What a confidence builder it is for that program as well, kind of going through the rest of the season. However, if you're Florida, I think you're kind of scratching your head a little bit and saying, "Okay, what have we got to do to regroup here and get this thing moving in the direction that it needs to go?"
No, I agree. I mean, that had to be heartbreaking for Florida, knowing, history's on their side, the new coach, the excitement that comes along with that, bringing in somebody that has a proven track record, and then coming out there and then really, I would say before the end of the game, I mean, Kentucky was owning that. It wasn't by no means Florida just looked lost. And so it's one of those things, I know, learning a new system, but Kentucky beating Florida, man, that was just shocking, and kudos for that. And I know Stoops, with his coaching tenure, he's a defensive guy coming from Florida State,
right?
And just one of those guys that was like, he's a defensive coach. When is his offense going to produce? because your defense can only keep you around for so long. And what shocked me though was Florida's defense not really having an answer to stop Kentucky from, putting more points on the board, because, it's like Kentucky is usually, they might give you a good half, but putting a full game together against Florida, I mean, that just surprised me. And I just give them props, a huge win, and helps their season greatly moving forward.
Couldn't have said it better.
So what were your overall thoughts for week 2? I mean, we've been through, I guess your week 0 with not so, teams that nobody on the radar. Then you had week 1, and then week 2 comes along, and we had some good games. But I mean, really, the game of the week, which we didn't even talk about yet, was Texas A&M and Clemson. That one right there was, you have the number 2 team in the nation going against an unranked Texas A&M Jimbo Fisher team that, Jimbo Fisher, even though he's a new coach getting in that position, he has players and he's going to get the best out of his players. And I think he kind of showed that during this game, that even though he's somebody new, I believe he's going to make an impact quick in SEC.
Well, you think about Clemson going on the road and going into that environment there for the 12th man and the energy that was there. And as soon as you started watching that game, you felt the energy that was there. Yeah, Clemson kind of hit him in the mouth a little bit there and kind of got up to an early lead. But you saw Texas A&M really fight back, and I think you could see a little bit of the thumbprint of Jimbo Fisher being put on that team, give those guys having confidence. That quarterback for Texas A&M, he's going to be good for the next couple of years. I think he turned a lot of heads, turned a lot of lights on there. I am a little worried about this 2 quarterback system that Clemson's trying to play there. That Trevor Lawrence kid that they've got coming in off the bench, he's got a cannon. I mean, he's got some really good talent. He's kind of raw though, and I don't know that he's ready to lead this team. Bryant isn't necessarily the greatest thrower of the ball, but you can tell that he can lead that team and lead it well. They've got a massive defensive line. That defense is stout. That defense is strong. It showed up when it needed to show up there in that Texas A&M game. But I think that if you're kind of looking at that, you kind of scratching your head a little bit there on Clemson. You thought that maybe they would kind of go in there and do a little bit better job putting Texas A&M away when they got up. But once again, you're going on the road in college football. You're going into a really hostile environment. The fact that they came out of there with a W is a really good thing for them moving forward. But I think you got to make some decisions here about what you're going to do at the quarterback spot as well.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And I know it's been one of those things for Texas A&M since Johnny Manziel to try to, really find that magic. But I really think bringing in Jimbo Fisher could really bring that 12th man to that team, because he's the master at adjustments.
Sure.
He's made for Florida State, when he was the coach there, we might flop in the first half, but he's going to make it an adjustments where we're going to be in the game. There's a lot of games last year we lost towards the end of the game on a couple of drives that made or broke the game really. Mm-hmm. But I mean, again, he, like Kirk Herbstreit always talks about, the guy makes the adjustments that are necessary to get his team back in the game. It's just whether the players are going to execute, and you actually saw that. Clemson got up quick, punched them in the mouth. Again, I'm not sold on the 2 QB system either, but again, that did pay off with that one touchdown pass.
Sure.
But at the same time, which again, that looked like some PlayStation moves that receiver put on him. I mean, the script couldn't have been written any better for that guy to get in,
right,
throw that dart, and for that guy to spin off of people like he did. It was just plain ridiculous and nasty. But it's one of those things. Jimbo Fisher, again, you saw Jimbo Fisher at his finest, making the adjustments, making sure his team was there and have that chance. And I really think that, the fumble was in the end zone, not in the end zone.
Yeah.
That really hurt him.
Oh, no doubt.
And so that was one of those things. It was a questionable call. But again, it's one of those, there wasn't indisputable evidence to really overturn it. And so that, unfortunately for them, time ran out, but you can tell that their offense started to click when they needed it to. It's just unfortunately they couldn't get that 2-point conversion. But again, Texas A&M is going to be a team that, you'll see in the rankings pretty quickly. And Clemson, again, I'm thinking they're going to take care of business, number 2 team in the nation. And, maybe it was one of those, that hostile environment got to them. The 12th man was there, and they scratched and clawed and actually got that win that they needed, because every team this year is going to have that.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully for Clemson's sake, that was the only game that it's going to be the case, but I don't think so.
Well, you know as well as I do. It's not like the ACC is the strongest conference this year. I think we can all recognize that. But at the same time, you're still playing conference games. You're still playing rivalry games. You got to go on the road sometimes in there, and so there are going to be some tough games along the way, just because that they are conference games. But I do have a question that I want to ask you as it relates to Jimbo Fisher. So obviously, Jimbo Fisher left Tallahassee to go and be a part of the Texas A&M University down there. So you look at what Jimbo Fisher is doing with Texas A&M so far this season. We've talked pretty highly about him. And then we look at what Taggart's done with FSU right now. How are you feeling about Jimbo Fisher being there at Texas A&M right now?
Well, initially, I was one of the guys that said we need something different.
Okay.
Getting towards, especially when we come at 7-6, we're right there. It's the same, and hopefully Texas A&M doesn't run into that. The honeymoon phase was over. Jimbo Fisher won his national championship, but since then it's been hit or miss. We've had high expectations, and then last year was just an epic fail after Francois Blackman. Held his own, being a true freshman and coming in there and doing his thing. He really showed a lot of poise, and a lot of people, Blackman's not the man. I'm really comfortable no matter who you put in right now for Florida State, whether it's Francois or Blackman, they're going to get the job done. But Jimbo Fisher, it's one of those things. I was thinking it was like he didn't want to budge on the defensive coordinator scenario. His play calling it got to the point where it was like something was just not right. And so I was really one of those guys that hoping Jimbo Fisher would get it turned around, because again, even the games we lose at Florida State with Jimbo Fisher at the realm, we were in the game.
Right.
Other than the fact that when we straight got beat 1,000,000 to 0 to Louisville, that with Lamar Jackson, that game was just. There's not many games that happened to us in.
Right.
I think that was probably the worst defeat in program history with Jimbo at being who he was. I don't think Bobby Bowden never got beat that bad, but it was embarrassing. But again, it was one of those things that I wasn't hurt, or there's like I hope he, I hate him.
Right.
All these guys. I don't have any animosity like that. Like, the guy did it. He helped deliver us a national championship.
Yeah.
He was the coach in waiting. You could say what you want. Bobby Bowden was forced out. He got put in the position. He did his thing. But I really think his course ran out. And he was, historically, for the last 3 or 4 years, it's one of those things, he can never get that offensive line together. Right. That's our biggest downfall. And that has been the killer. The offensive line, if you can't block, you can't run. And having Dalvin Cook was a blessing, because if we didn't have him,
right,
because we could run block, but pass protection blocking is just a different story. So, and again, this year, I think there's no run blocking and there's no pass protection. So it's one of those things that you're going to have to figure it out. You're going to have to figure out ways to get the ball out. I think Willie Taggart's offense, and I'm excited, but I don't know if Willie Taggart really had the credentials to be the head coach of Florida State. He's turned around Western Kentucky. What do you mean turn around? He never saw them in a meaningful, New Year's Day bowl. South Florida, he got them turned around quickly. He had an athletic quarterback in Flowers. But it's one of those things for his first 2 years of South Florida, his offense, his traditional offense that he learned from the Harbaughs, just was not working. Right. So he knew he had to come up with this West Coast offense, or whatever he wants to call it, the lethal simplicity garbage that just doesn't seem to be working right now. And again, it's going to take a while for people to I guess, the guys to buy into what this thing is. But I just expected more of him coming in. He built up more of trying to bring the family back to FSU,
right?
Trying to get Bobby Bowden involved, which Jimbo Fisher was horrible at, and I don't know why. Bobby Bowden did a lot for FSU, so it was one of those things that I liked a lot of it was the honeymoon phase. We got a new coach. He surrounded himself with all these high profile, the Derek Brooks, the Deion Sanders, the Charlie Wards, the Bobby Bowdens, the Burt Reynolds. And we're like, we're bringing the family back because Florida State has lost that. But it's like that phase is over. So that's only going to that's only going to get you so far, especially at Florida State. Even though we play in the ACC, you can say that's one of a top 5 coaching job, no matter who is out there. So my thing is, I think, and it's too early to say, but I would say, looking back on it right now, it's like we settled for somebody. We didn't wait for somebody that had the credentials to actually take the helm. I mean, Jimbo Fisher obviously didn't have those credentials either. It wasn't something that he was going around and he didn't do too much.
But he's there.
But he was there. But, it was like you felt confident with Bobby Bowden, the man, the myth and the legend, saying, hey, this is my coach in waiting, and this is who's going to take over but Jimbo Fisher just dips out, because Florida State just wasn't buying into his demands as far as the money and trying to get new facilities. And obviously they're doing that for Taggart, I guess, because he's generated so much, everybody's just excited. And then the excitement really went away week 1 when we just laid that egg. And then week 2, when we just survived against Stanford, and people are sitting there like lethal garbage. That's what his offense is. It's not lethal simplicity. It's lethal garbage. So right now, I mean, these bubble screens, I hate them because 3rd and 1 bubble screens. I mean, let's go back to week 1 when Willie Taggart's sitting there doing a wildcat formation with Cam Akers, supposedly one of the top running backs in the nation, and he has the ability. But when it's 3rd and long, and you're struggling to score, and you do the wildcat formation, and then you fumble out of that, that has to be one of the worst calls in Taggart's short term. It's like, dude, you've only coached 1 game, and you're calling the wildcat formation. That's a quick way to get the exit. And so I hope, and we didn't see the wildcat at all week 2 against a lesser opponent.
Right.
But again, it's like, guy, you can't come in. This is not Pee-wee football. This is not, you just can't come in here and do that with the level of defense that Bud Foster has, especially with a team. It's not like Francois or Cam Akers are these just super fast track stars that are going to blow people out and run like a 3.9 40. It's just not happening. So it's like, you can't just run the wildcat, dude. So yeah, when it comes to the Taggart thing, I'm not sold on it. I'm not butthurt at by no means that Jimbo took more money. It's business. At the end of the day, college football is business. He did what he thought was best for his family. And obviously Texas A&M has the money. Before it was Texas, and everybody was like, Texas has the money, and everybody wanted to go there. Texas A&M has obviously what they are paying Jimbo Fisher. They have the money.
Yep.
And it's hard to say I wouldn't have done the same thing. As much, even being from Tallahassee, Florida, loving Florida State and knowing that's my team, and knowing I had a 7-6 season, or knowing my season was at a loss, and knowing somebody was going to pay me more money than I know what to do with, I'm there. So I just don't know. I don't know if I can't hate him for that. And a lot of the people I talk to on a daily basis, I hope Jimbo, I want to actually see him succeed, because I want somebody to compete against the Saban. I want somebody to compete against, these teams that are continuously up there in the SEC. Yep. And you want to see somebody get dethroned. And I just remember it was such an amazing time when Johnny Manziel was in there just actually beating Alabama. I'm like, man, this is awesome. They can't tackle that guy.
Yeah, I don't want to hear about Johnny Manziel. I still haven't forgiven him for what he did against Duke in the Chick-fil-A Bowl.
Oh man, yeah, that's one of those. Yeah, it's one of those crushing things. But still, dude, it's one of those. Again, him bringing that excitement to the game helped put Texas A&M back on the map. And again, Jimbo Fisher coming in. I think it's going to be one of those things. Kevin Sumlin helped them do so much, but it was time again for them to really switch it up and go a different direction. And I really think they got to instill in Jimbo Fisher. I mean, him just going over there, obviously they paid for it, but they were willing to pay for it.
Right.
So.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, man. And so I got a question for you.
Okay.
I went to the first Duke game, knowing you're a Duke fan.
Yeah.
I went to the first Duke game, Duke versus Army, a great game, and I enjoyed myself. I actually really enjoyed walking around the facility and actually seeing what they've done with that place. It is awesome. Man,
it's fantastic.
What Cutcliffe has been able to bring to that organization is just great. And I wish them the best. And I'm going to continue to follow them because they're exciting, and actually seeing them beat Army after suffering that loss to Army the year before, like a 21-16 loss, which is a heartbreaker, and them not having the best season at 7-6, and the Army having a 10-3 year.
Yeah,
I'm sitting there going in that game. I'm like, what is Duke going to do? I thought Army had their number, and the Duke again was a team that didn't beat themselves. They showed up, they pulled out the win. And then they do it in week 2 against Northwestern. So what is your take? What are the things that that are exciting?
which has kind of been the problem with Duke the last couple of years. We kind of are running that same style offense that, it's not like Duke is getting the best recruits in the country or anything like that. They're using what they got, and they're putting together a pretty solid team but they've been beating themselves with a lot of turnovers over the last couple of years. And so they come in against Army, they play safe, secure ball, they do what they need to do there. I didn't know how this season was going to go. I know the conversations that were being had there. And then to come in against Northwestern as well. And I'll be honest with you, I really thought the Duke would lose that game.
I did too.
We lost to Northwestern last year, and I really thought that would kind of be the case again this year. However, I was pleasantly surprised to see Duke come out of there with that win, but it didn't come without a couple of losses as well. Our starting quarterback got injured. He's having to have surgery this week, so he's out in an indefinite amount of time right now. So the team's kind of having to regroup. However, let me say this as well. David Cutcliffe is one of the best things that's ever happened to the Duke football program. Man, I remember some very bleak times of winless seasons back to back, and you just kind of were struggling, wondering what would ever happen. He's come in there, he's brought life. He's been a steadfast staple there that, he had opportunities to go to other places and go to other programs. There are programs maybe like a Florida State or like a Miami or something like that, don't understand what it's like to just be happy going to a bowl game. But I can tell you this, man, for the Duke faithful, man, I run into so many Duke fans that say, oh, I'm a Duke basketball fan, but in football, I pull for somebody else. No. You stick with your team. And so, man, I've been pulling for Duke football for years. And then finally to get this opportunity to say, hey, we're going to bowl games. And I know I made the comment earlier about Johnny Manziel coming back and beating us in the Chick-fil-A Bowl a couple of years ago. Hey, there was something just exciting about being there. Look, a couple of years ago, we were playing the ACC championship game. Who would have thought that would ever happen? All right, yes, we got stomped. Yes, it was an embarrassing loss. I get it. But once again, we were there. And it's all because of David Cutcliffe and the staff that he's put together, the culture that he's built. You mentioned the facilities that they've upgraded. That area doesn't even look the same. And I can remember going to football games there, and the track, it looked like that it was a track course that a football field had just been placed in the middle of. It didn't look, it just kind of, it was almost embarrassing to go to some of the, yeah, exactly. There were more people that would go to high school football games than would go to Duke football games. All right. So, but man, I tell you what, I'm proud. I'm proud of the coaching staff that we have. I'm proud of the program that's being built there. I'm proud of the players that are there as well. And yeah, we've hit a couple of bumps in the road with some injuries right now, and we're a little bit unsure about how all that's going to play out. However, at the same time, I think things are still shaping up for this to be a really good year for the Duke football program.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, I would agree, man. I was just impressed at how they didn't do anything to beat themselves in that Army game. I mean, there was a couple things, being the week one that they wish they can have back, but it was one of those things, man, that you can tell they're just a disciplined team. Cutcliffe has them playing in that quarterback. It's unfortunate that he got injured, man, because again, it's like Cutcliffe is able to put guys in position and get the best out of him. That quarterback is the right guy, and unfortunately got hurt. But at the same time, when he comes back, Duke's going to have. I believe Duke's going to have a decent year because their defense is decent, their offense is good. I mean, and so I think they're going to make a little bit of noise in the ACC. And like you said, man, I was there and who would have thought? I was at the ACC championship game to watch Florida State play Duke. I would have never thought I would have ever uttered that,
Neither did we.
Outside the Steve Spurrier era whenever he did his thing, it's like one of those, it's like, geez. But I mean, again, it wasn't that, the very beginning, the first quarter was real close, but after that it was not close. But again, man, Duke, Cutcliffe, you just can't say enough of what he's done for that team and Duke in general. And he's brought a level of excitement to the fans like yourself and myself that actually get to attend the games and see him go out and execute and know he's a good man, know he's going to do what's right for the program, and actually to be able to talk about Duke being relevant is pretty cool.
One of the first things this is way off topic, but one of the first things I remember him doing was scheduling a home and home with Alabama. And it's kind of like sitting there going, have you lost your mind? I'm pretty sure he pulled one over on them because I'm pretty sure Alabama didn't know they were actually coming to Durham at that point in time.
Yeah.
But I mean, okay, so you're scheduling this game as a home and home, going to be like a week 2 game. Alabama is one of the top teams in the country, and it's probably going to come in there and have its way with Duke, which it did. but it said something to the players at that point in time, and I think it also said something to the culture and Duke University as a whole, saying, "Hey, look, we're not coming in here just to be a secondary program to the basketball program. We're coming in here to make our mark." And I think that really said a lot about him and about the culture that he was trying to create at that point in time, and it's paying off now. It's paying dividends now. No, we're not going to be competing for the national championship. Nobody has those grand ideas at this point in time or anything like that. But I will say this. Every game that we play right now, we feel like that we have a chance to win. Even though we may go in as underdogs right now, we still feel like that, hey, we can go in there and we can compete and we can pull this game out.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's a good feeling to have, right? Knowing
absolutely.
that, going into the game that your team could still pull off an upset, even if you're the underdog, because he's gonna put them in position to be successful. I think that's exciting, man. And I really think that gives Duke fans that looks forward to something continuously into the future, especially when you're starting to take your kids to the a bowl game.
Yeah,
I mean, that was elusive to Duke forever, and then they get in there and it's something that he consistently seems like he's putting his team in position to get in that bowl game.
And now the bowl game has become the expectation. It's no longer just, oh, wow, we're excited about doing that one. Now it's become, okay, but we expect to get to a bowl game. What's the next step for us?
Right, exactly. So that really took us, and I'm glad you were able to answer that question the way you did. It again lets me know that you're following your team, which is a good thing. And so we're going into week 3. We're not going to do a rundown of week 3. We're going to try to wrap this up here in just a few minutes. But, there are some relevant games that I just wanted to touch on to see, to try to get your feel for it. I mean, we have the 3 games that are really on the radar that I'm looking forward to are the ranked teams in LSU and Auburn. That matchup's going to be, something to keep an eye on. Is LSU, was their week 1? Because they didn't come out and dominate week 2 by no means.
Right.
They took care of business. And so is that, was that slow start in week 2? Is that going to be something that affects them against Auburn going into that game? So I just want to know your thoughts on the Auburn and LSU game.
Well, you wonder if week 2 for LSU was just kind of that proverbial trap game, knowing that they had, a big game week 1, coming up with a big game in week 3. And it's like, okay, we can just kind of coast by with week 2. But hey, I think you're getting ready to see a really big game from Auburn and LSU coming at it. Both of them got a lot to prove still. I think everybody's still got question marks surrounding both of those teams about, are they for real? What's going to happen here? I think, we'll reserve some picks for later on in the week here, but I think you're going to see a pretty good game out of LSU and Auburn.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think their defense, both defenses will definitely show up. And again, it might be cliche to say, obviously, the offense has to score more points than the other team to win. But come on, the defenses are going to show up for both of these teams. And you're looking at, is the quarterback, for LSU going to be able to really be cool, calm, and collective like he was in week 1? And really take them to the, and get them over that hump and get the upset against Auburn.
Absolutely.
Then we got later on is the Boise State and Oklahoma State game. And this one is, again, number 17 versus number 24. So it's not a huge game, but it does still pit 2 teams against each other that are ranked. Boise State, and Oklahoma State, the verdict is still not in for these 2 teams. But, I just want to know if you had any thoughts with this game.
Well, I mean, I think when you think Oklahoma State, you immediately think high-powered offense coming in there, slinging the ball around. Is that going to be the case here against Boise State? And Boise State's still one of those teams that I feel like is still trying to find itself. There was the magic of Boise State several years ago about who they were and what they were able to produce and were they going to be able to compete with the big boys. And well, here they are. Here's an opportunity for them to kind of resurrect themselves as a national power contender. And if they can knock off another top 25 team here, then maybe they can really begin to make their name a household name as far as the rest of the nation is concerned.
No, I totally agree with that. I really think Boise State has a big opportunity, even though they come in as the higher ranked team. I really think it wouldn't be an upset for Boise State to win, but I really think getting that win over a legitimate Oklahoma State team, I think really would pay huge dividends on them going forward and hopefully earning that New Year's bowl it going forward. I don't think either one of those teams are really going to be relevant come towards the end of the season. But again, you never know. So the game that I'm really looking at is TCU and Ohio State.
Right.
The Urban Meyer situation, we can talk about that a little bit later, or we might even just put that as like a blog or an article on our website. Right. So because we can talk about days, go on for days about that whole situation. But going in, you got Ohio State, high-powered offense. It looks like going against a TCU team that actually, put away SMU last week in the second half, but struggled mightily in the first half. And it was actually a game like 14-12 or something like that at halftime. And so it was one of those things people were like, what? TCU is struggling with SMU. SMU is one of those teams that can hang in there with you from time to time. But it was just a TCU performance that first half. That was just something they want to forget about, because that second half they came out, they ended up winning like 41-12, I believe. And so they got a big win. Typically when you're looking at that scoreboard, you're like, okay, it was an easy win. It wasn't. It really wasn't an easy win by no means. Watching that game, I sat there and watched TCU struggle, and I was like, man, they got Ohio State next week. So I don't know if they were looking forward to that game again, a trap game with SMU that almost got them suckered in.
Right.
And almost got them beat. But, if they play around against Ohio State this week, I don't see them coming out victorious.
Well, I'm like you right now. This podcast has gone a little longer enough as it is, so we could spend the next couple of hours talking about Urban Meyer. So I don't want to make it go on any longer with that. I will say this, that I've been impressed with the way that the players have responded in Urban Meyer's absence in this. I think the coaching staff appears to have done a really good job of getting those players prepared to play, even with all the distractions that have gone on with the situation. This is the last week, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Urban Meyer won't be on the sideline. I know he's able to practice with the team, but he can't be there for game day. So this will be the last week as he serves out his 3-game suspension and getting ready for the team and getting ready. And this is a big game for them. I guess it'll be another opportunity for them to show what they can do, them up against TCU. It's going to be intriguing to watch that matchup, to see which teams are. I think, you start getting into week 3, you start finding out teams are for real or not.
Yeah.
Ohio State's always there. They're not always there, but they have been there ever since Urban Meyer showed up. They've been in the picture. They've been a strong team, a strong contender, and we're going to see what that team can do up against this TCU team.
Yeah, man, I totally agree. I really think Ohio State's going to have their number come this game, but it's one of those things that Urban Meyer is going to be coming back into a situation. I think he's going to be in a good position at 3-0 after this week. They can't overlook TCU by no means, but at the same time, I don't think they're going to have they're not. I really don't see them having trouble with them. And like your point did run a little longer. We covered a couple more weeks, than we planned on. We're going to do it on a weekly basis, moving forward. We missed starting sooner than we wanted to. So again, really touching on the week 0 and week 1 games kind of put us a little bit behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
Made this episode a little longer. Going forward, we're going to have, be a lot shorter, a lot more action packed, a lot more going forward. I appreciate everybody listening. I appreciate you, Greg, for taking your time and co-hosting this thing with me, man. And I look forward to the rest of the year, man.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be a great. College football season. I'm also excited about us as basketball season begins to heat up there. I'm really excited about that. There's a lot of good things to be able to share about my team, about the Duke Blue Devils coming into this season. There's a lot of promise surrounding them, but there's still a lot of question marks that are surrounding their college basketball. Is a long season as well, but this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. Hooking up with you every week, talking about some of the top stories and top games in college football as we make our way towards that infamous college football playoff.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt, man. And I know you have a lot to be excited about with Duke basketball. I've been actually really following them closely their off season, but I really do appreciate you jumping on with me, man. I look forward to doing this with you on a weekly basis moving forward. I can't wait for our website to be up, collegesportshour.com. It's not functioning and fully developed right now, but as we go along, you're going to get predictions from me, Greg, some other hosts that, individuals, guests that I bring onto the show with me. We might do this on a Thursday, we might do this 2 times a week, one with Greg and one with a special guest during the week, and switch it up and keeping it fresh. But I really appreciate everybody tuning in, listen to the College Sports Hour, and I'm really looking forward to this, guys. Talk to you next time. Bye.
See you.